but the people of South Africa, and women in particular, close quote. The things we do should not be for the benefit of ourselves as individuals only, but the benefits of what we do should extend to our people and the vulnerable at all times. Let me end with a quote from President Cyril Ramaphosa, where he said, and I quote, "It's time for hope, unity, renewal, and we need to unify our people," close quote. This is so amped in these challenging times for humankind, for our continent and the world. And all our leaders and our forebears then were saying to us, we must follow the direction that they gave us. And that critical direction is that social dialogue is key in everything that we do. Let's work together to grow Africa and the world. And I must say, today we are here because as the Africa Group, we took a decision in Geneva. And I must say also, I was not part of that governing body that day. And the Africa Group said, when the Prime Minister from Mauritius resigned, they said, because he was the co-chair on the Global Commission on the Future of Work, we want to replace him with an African representative. And they took a decision that South Africa must give us the President of the Republic of South Africa to come and co-chair. And I get a call around 12:30 in the evening from the Deputy Minister from South Africa to say this is the decision of the Africa Group and therefore you must implement. You don't have a choice. And I switched off the phone and immediately I was phoned by Mr. Mtwaba, who said, the African Group has taken this decision and therefore just go and negotiate with the President. And I do believe that all of you do understand the schedules of the leadership that occupies the first office of the land. I had to go and negotiate with the President, Cyril Ramaphosa, and he said, I don't think that I will be able to take this responsibility. I said, President, it's not my decision, but it's the decision by the Africa Group. And you always say, Tuma mina, it's high time to be tumaed by the Africa Group. And I said, just give us only one day to go and listen what you are supposed to do in Geneva. I said, I know that you are the best negotiator, but I have learned from you. And based on what you always say, you want to make sure that the workers of this country are protected. It's high time, because you were once the Secretary General of a trade union, and therefore this is the call by the workers of the world, and you must be too mad. And he said, well, I will try. And I must say, I was brave that day, but what gave me that strength was the bottle of water. Because I was looking at the President and I said, oh my goodness, I don't know what then. But I said, I want to say, President Ramaphosa agreed to be tuned by the African group. Now, allow me to request the President of the Republic of South Africa, His Excellency Cyril Ramaphosa, to come and present the Global Commission report so that we can be able to see what is it that he was co-chairing and what is it that you said he must go and do. And President Cyril Ramaphosa is a member of all constituencies. By virtue of being a community in South Africa, he belongs to the community constituency. And also by the virtue of being the president of the African National Congress, is a member of the community of South Africa. And by virtue of being a lawyer and also a former business person, is part of the business constituency. But the people that groomed him, I must say, is organized labor by the virtue that he was the secretary of the trade union. And here today is a member of the government constituency, being the President of the Republic of South Africa. Your Excellency, President Cyril Ramaphosa, come and table the report. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let's be seated, please. Thank you, Minister Oliphant. President of the Republic of Namibia and Chairperson of SADC, President Hage Geingob. Director-General of the International Labour Organization, Mr. Guy Ryder. Minister of Labour of South Africa, Ms. Mildred Oliphant. Ministers and deputy ministers who are present here, Mr. Mthunzi Mdwaba, Employers Vice Chair on the ILO governing body, business leaders who are here and trade union leaders, representatives of the ILO and ARLEC, representatives of labor and business, distinguished guests, and ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed my great pleasure to welcome all of you who have come from far afield to South Africa, and especially my brother, President Hage Geingob, who's traveled across deserts, across rivers, across mountains, rivulets and streams to be here. We thank you very much. The only thing you did not do is to travel across oceans. You traveled across a few borders, and we thank you for being here, President Geingob. You really honor us with your presence here, and it's not only your responsibility as chair of SADC that brings you here, but indeed it is your real interest in the work that has been done by the ILO and the world of workers as well. This gathering provides an opportunity to mark a number of significant milestones, historic milestones for that matter. This year, as many of you would know, is the centenary of the International Labour Organization. The ILO was formed in 1919 after the First World War, when the world was going through great hardships and difficulties. It is the 60th year of the ILO's presence in Africa, and the African Regional Labour Administration Center is holding its 45th Governing Council. This year, South Africa is celebrating 25 years of freedom and democracy, a democracy that was won in no small part through the sustained contribution and struggle of the working people of South Africa. It was here in the province that we are in, KwaZulu-Natal, in the nearby city of Durban, that a watershed moment in the struggle of workers' rights took place in 1973, when the Durban strikes, as they are called, erupted and just inspired a great deal of hope in the participation of workers in the struggle for not only their rights but also freedom. After years of repression and illegality, these waves of strikes by black workers led to the resurgence of the independent trade union movement in South Africa and gave new impetus to the struggle against apartheid. It was black workers who, after all, were bearing the brunt of discrimination in the workplace. Working and living conditions were poor, and wages were even poorer. Job reservation kept black workers out of higher paying positions. Trade unionism was severely curtailed, and in some sectors even banned or restricted. In fighting against these injustices in the workplace and in fighting for their rights, the workers of Durban gave hope and encouragement to the broader struggle. This history, and indeed the entire history of the anti-apartheid struggle in South Africa, underscores the centrality of workers, of their rights, of their conditions of work, and their general well-being to the success and prosperity of any society. Our countries were built by the hands of hard-working men and women. Our collective fortunes depend on the creation of a society where every human being is accorded their dignity, both through and in the work that they do. We are therefore seeking to build a world where work does not result in the commodification of a human being, but in a higher standard of living, the protection of rights, and the possibility of the advancement of the lives of people who work in this world. It is a world where men and women in the workplace are equals before the law and protected from prejudice and injustice. It is a human-centered society anchored in the principles of social justice, the vision of the International Labour Organization as it was formed in 1919. This year, the ILO begins the second centenary of advancing social justice in the world of work and in furthering its mission to promote jobs as well as to protect people. As nations of the world, we have made important progress in furthering the ILO's mission. Many of the advances of the past 2 centuries in the world of work, be it raised wage levels, improved working conditions, improved working hours, unemployment insurance, and other benefits, have been thanks to the international labor standards and social protection set by the ILO. All this has come about because of the implicit recognition that decent employment is linked and tied to peace, prosperity, and progress in the world. The ILO has been a vital instrument for the good of working people the world over, and brought decency, dignity, and pride to the workplace. However, and despite our advances, the world we live in today, as many of us know, faces enormous and a multiplicity of challenges. Inequality continues to rise. Millions of people around the world are in working poverty trap. In many societies, working people still labor in antiquated working conditions that have little regard to their rights, with forced indenture, what you could call modern-day slavery, and even forms of servitude and bondage that are common. Elsewhere, other challenges are rapid technological advance that has its own consequences for workers and for communities, with digitization and mechanization of work processes giving rise to increased insecurity and job losses. The impacts of globalization, the demographic shifts that we see around the world, trade and other forms of protectionism, the challenge of the climate that we see around us, and all these are bound to have consequences for future work processes. It is the question of how to manage and to harness these forces currently transforming our world of work that has given impetus to the ILO Global Commission on the Future of Work. In drafting the report that the ILO launched, we have chosen not to single out technology ahead of all transformative forces. We have instead focused our recommendations on what needs to be done to create the best future for the greatest number of people in a fundamentally different world of work. The report's findings are informed by the dialogues between government representatives, employers' organizations, and trade unions in more than 110 of the member states of the ILO. It speaks to the need to put people at the heart of economic as well as social policy, but more importantly, at the heart and at the real center of business practices that continue to unfold. The starting point was this: dynamic forces are transforming the world of work. And that was an important recognition to admit that there are forces that are having an impact on the world of work and how work is going to be done and unfold in the future. And this in itself offers remarkable opportunities, because as the world of work changes, it can not only be seen as yielding problems, it also yields a number of opportunities, and the challenges that it gives rise to are challenges that then have to be addressed. If we are to harness these changes for our benefit rather than be shaped by them, we need a new approach. The Global Commission's report proposes 10 recommendations, and these 10 recommendations are essentially grounded on 3 pillars. The first pillar deals with investing in the capabilities of people, the people who perform the work that makes the world go round. And secondly, investing in the institutions of the world of work. And thirdly, investing in decent and sustainable work. So if we take these 3 pillars, and recognizing that at the center of all this must be human beings. When we talk about investing in the capabilities of people, we mean more than simply investing in human capital. We recognize that it is necessary to consider human development more broadly, dealing with factors such as rights, access, and opportunities. If people are to benefit from, rather than be constricted by, the new technology, they need to have the skills to interact with the new technologies that are emerging. But they also need to be reskilled. As technology changes, they need to gain new skills as they interface with new technology. But in the end, they also need to upskill throughout their lives. And so we look at a situation where we say, because there are all these forces that are bearing heavily on the world of work and bringing about fundamental and dramatic changes, we now need to have human beings or people at the center, but as they are at the center, they need to be well prepared and well attuned to the changes that will be taking place on an ongoing basis. And in order for them to do so, they've got to move from being skilled to reskilling and to upskilling. But that in itself gives rise to another dynamic, and that dynamic is they've got to be prepared to be learning throughout their lives. Throughout their lives, they've got to know that we've got to gain skills, reskill, and upskill. And it opens up great and new opportunities for people around the world that we must now enter a situation where we learn on an ongoing basis. So it becomes a lifelong learning process so that we interface and interact with the dramatic changes that are around us. Because these changes have been taking place since human beings were on this world. They have been changing all the time, and throughout we have adapted, we have interfaced with the changes, but now the changes are much faster, much more dramatic, and they are the types of changes that can marginalize human beings. We therefore say we need now to approach this in a different way and embrace the concept of lifelong learning. We propose formal recognition of a universal entitlement to lifelong learning and the setting up of related systems funded by reformed employment insurance or social funds. A strong lifelong learning system will enable workers to assume responsibility for their own learning and also assume responsibility for their own skills. And it will encourage them to take the time as well as the risk to learn, to train, and help employers find the workers that they need. We also need more support for work transitions, both through different stages of workers' careers and when they move between various types of works. Gender equality must also be made a reality through taking transformative and measurable steps. This includes more gender-balanced measures around childcare and family responsibilities, more transparency in pay, including mandatory reporting, eliminating violence and harassment in the workplace, and specific measures to ensure equal opportunities, particularly in the technology sector. And underpinning all these, we recommend universal, lifelong social protection. And this is being put forward because we are dealing with human beings who have rights, inalienable rights, who have dignity, but human beings who also need to have that social protection floor. This should include a basic protection floor, or social protection floor rather, complemented by contributory social protection schemes. And we recognize that this will require reallocation of public spending. Now, the second pillar that the Commission looked at is increasing investment in the institutions of work. This extends to institutions, the systems, as well as the regulations. And we propose establishing a universal labor guarantee that would guarantee fundamental workers' rights, such as freedom of association, the right to collective bargaining, and freedom from forced and child labor. Now, this may come as a surprise to many, particularly in this country, that why do you need a universal labor guarantee? This is so needed in many parts of the world because working people in many parts of the world still do not enjoy some of these basic rights. So therefore, we need to get the world to graduate more and more towards embracing more fully and completely the labor type of guarantee in which is embedded the workers' rights that we're talking about. It would also include a set of basic working conditions, such as an adequate living wage, limits on hours of work, and safety and health at work. The guarantee would create a starting point from which to build the labor market institutions appropriate for the 21st century world of work. In addition, a report proposes new measures on time sovereignty to give workers greater control over the hours and times that they work, while meeting the needs of business. Technology has blurred the lines between working and private time, but it can and should be used to expand choice and work-life balance. Workers and employers' organizations need to embrace technology to reach and organize these working in and non-traditional and informal ways. In the 20th century, we established that labor is not a commodity. Now, in the 21st century, we must ensure that labor is not a robot. We propose a human-in-command type of approach, ensuring that technology frees workers and improves work rather than reducing their control over their own lives and over their own time. In addition, we propose an international governance system for digital labor platforms to ensure technology works in the service of decent work. The third pillar of our human-centered agenda is investment in decent and sustainable work. We must increase long-term investment in areas that support the transformation we want, favor human development, and protect the planet as well. Targeted private and public sector investment, coupled with the right technology, can create millions of new, decent, sustainable jobs in the green economy. And the green economy is already proving that it can create a number of new jobs, good-paying jobs, and jobs that are durable and sustainable. And there is the other economy which at times we give scant attention to, and that is the care economy. The care economy is growing by leaps and bounds, And we need to recognize that, because it is about the care of human beings. And it is human beings who must be able to care for other human beings. Many more people are being employed in this sector. The other one is the infrastructure development, and indeed the other one is in the rural areas, which are often neglected. Our final recommendation involves reshaping the incentive structures that guide business activities so they encourage long-term responsible investment in the real economy. This would include adopting additional indicators for measuring progress, because GDP alone is an insufficient indicator of success. We need broader measures that capture environmental impact, that also address unpaid work, equality, and other aspects of human well-being. We recommend changes in corporate governance and conduct, such as an extension to stakeholder representation, to make companies much more accountable, and the creation of incentives for a longer-term outlook on success. Now, the stakeholder representation is an important one. And in our own country, our trade unions have always been very, very shy and reluctant to participate in the governance of the companies that they work for. And I've always called for unions to grasp the nettle and be willing to participate in the governance of the companies that they work for. And this, to me, is very important. In countries where it is done, there seems to be greater progress in transparency, in being able to resolve problems as they arise or conflicts as they arise. This report is not exhaustive, and it really is opening the door on what we hope to be a much bigger conversation around ensuring the principle of social justice that we should advance in the world of work. Earlier, I asked the Director-General that since the launch of the report, how has the report been received? And I'm sure he will talk about that. But what this report gives us, it gives us the opportunity to open a conversation, to talk to various stakeholders around the world. It is essentially work in progress and does not propose quick fix solutions to what we really both want to see, but we are clear on the architecture that we need to put in place as we confront the changes that are unfolding and confronting the world of work. But the report itself is the fruit of the labor of a great number of people, from governments to worker organizations to business to NGOs to regional and continental and international bodies. And in the end, we must thank various people for the inputs that they have made, because they have made really valuable inputs that have given us a lot of the insights that are in the report. But I want to thank representatives from the African Regional Labour Administration Center for their presence here today, as well as the representatives from other bodies in the SADC region. As Africans, we are proud that this launch is taking place on a continent that has played such a formative role in the genesis of the global labor movement. I want to applaud my co-chair, Prime Minister of Sweden, for his support and stewardship during this process. It has been a privilege to work with a group of experienced and accomplished colleagues in carrying out the Commission's mandate. The Director-General, Guy Ryder, who will soon be speaking here, was the real spirit behind the work of the Commission, and he deserves to be thanked for his steady hand and leadership through this process. Our Minister of Labour was involved in a conspiracy with a number of people. Mthunzi was involved in the conspiracy, the leadership of trade union movement in COSATU, and a number of others. It was like a secret conspiracy to get me to play this role that I finally got to play. Change is a great thing, and it is necessary. And although it does not have to be, it can sometimes be frightening or overwhelming. And I think when many people begin to engage with this report, they might get frightened when they hear of, a universal labor guarantee. They might get frightened when they hear about all these proposals. And we just say, people should take a seat, take a deep breath, and look at all the proposals, and they will find that with all the changes that are happening around us, it is necessary that we should give working people in all countries in the world a great opportunity to be able to mediate and navigate their way around the various changes that are taking place. And I guess this may well have happened when human beings started emerging from various technologies, from being gatherer hunters, and started being farmers, and started doing all the many things that were done. And I'm sure they had commissions like the one that we had. They sat down around somebody, maybe they might have had their own international labor organization, where they looked at the changing technologies and crafted a way in which to engage with them. But we are doing it now, so we don't need to be terrified of the changes that are taking place. We need to confront them. But we are optimistic that with the right approach, an approach that is proactive as well as inclusive, we can achieve what we set out to do. I was particularly impressed when I was invited to be part of the commission that here was the ILO, leading up to its 100th year of existence, being very proactive, forward-looking, and saying, in 1919, we dealt with a particular set of challenges and problems. Now, working people in the world are confronting different ones. And it's, in the end, not only working people, but businesses, communities, and indeed everyone. The onward march of globalization has meant no single problem is one country's alone. It is in keeping with the spirit of these very interconnected times that we will continue to promote multilateralism and cooperation on forums such as the ILO, as the best and only way to prepare our countries for the world of work of the new century. As it is said, the narrowest thread, when sufficiently multiplied, will form the strongest cable. And a single drop of water through a weak and powerless, though a weak and powerless thing, when united by the force of attraction, forms a stream. Combined, this will form a river and then a mighty ocean. Unity of purpose on action is the mainstay of the ILO. And this has been the real driver of the ILO since it was formed. And working together, we can harness change and all that it brings to take our respective countries into a new bright future. A future of security and equal opportunity for every working man and woman. A future of prosperity and justice for all. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, President Cyril Ramaphosa. Just want to apologize to my colleagues by not explaining what Tumamina means. When you say Tumamina, you say send me. So we have sent him as the Africa Group, and he has produced the results. Thank you very much, President. It gives me a pleasure to invite His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Namibia, as the chairperson of the SADC region, Dr. Haig Geingob, to come and address us, Your Excellency.
Thank you. I was not sent, I was just summoned. The chairperson, Your Excellency Cyril Ramaphosa, President of the Republic of South Africa, the ILO Director-General, Mr. Guy Reiter, Honorable Ministers, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor for me to be accorded the opportunity to deliver some remarks, some comments during the occasion of the launch of the International Labour Organization Global Commission's report on the future of work, which has been prepared for our consideration regarding the kind of future which will emerge from the ongoing transformation of our societies. It is a great pleasure for me, in my capacity as a chairperson of SADC, to congratulate my dear brother, His Excellency Cyril Ramaphosa, for having successfully co-chaired the work of the ILO Global Commission on the future of work since 2017. The Global Commission launched its report on the work for the brighter future on January 22nd, 2019. And today, we are privileged to dialogue on its critical elements within African context. Chairman, as we celebrate the ILO centenary this year, we pay tribute to this esteemed organization, which has remained resolute in advancing the notion that people should be at the center of real progress in the modern day global society. The SADC region solemnly identifies with this ideal, and as such, fully lends its support to the present report, which is anchored on the proposition of human-centered agenda for future of the work. The report has made recommendations that are founded on 3 pillars, on which I wish to make the following comments. Now, don't say I'm copying from him. The truth is always a truth. So I crossed the mountains and rivers, so I prepared mine that side. He prepared his here, so. First one, increasing investment in people's capabilities. We welcome the perspective that the best future outcomes will be guaranteed by conscious decisions that ensure that the pace of technological change is determined by human capacity to drive it. However, this means that considerable investment must be made to support education and skills development that will swiftly and adequately respond to new developments. As a top priority, the education curricula in our region needs considerable reorientation to better respond to the emerging and future labor market needs. It is only in this way that the labor market can play its stabilizing role as a source of income and livelihoods for the majority. Second, increasing investment in the institutions of work. The report recognizes that the workplace is principally made up of human beings, and therefore an arena that holds significant prospects to advance society through strengthened governance systems and regulation. Bold measures are therefore suggested, including the establishment of a universal labor guarantee that includes the right to the adequate living wage, as well as a safe working environment. I'm confident that sooner rather than later, we'll all appreciate the value of these high ambitions and also realize that if we aim for any less, we will be abandoning our duty of care towards our children and future generations. Lastly, increasing investment in decent and sustainable work. These investments are urgently required, given that despite the positive economic growth rates registered by our countries over a long period of time, the effect on employment growth has been very minimal. The high rates of unemployment and underemployment in our countries, therefore, already present formidable challenges for our countries, particularly regarding youth unemployment. I wish, therefore, to agree with the recommendation that future approaches should seek to directly incentivize job creation as a key target rather than a byproduct of economic policies that otherwise pursue other objectives. My chairperson, as SADC continues to implement the SADC industrialization strategy, a roadmap 2015-2063, which is premised on transformative and structural changes of economies with a goal of having innovation-driven economies by 2063. The key elements of the fourth industrial revolution will need to feature prominently in our implementation strategies and programs. When I was always hearing about this fourth industrial revolution and artificial intelligence and robotics, as an employer, I was sometimes saying that robots are going to take over and there will be no more strikes and no more salary increments asked. But as a former fighter and my party is a workers' party, I had to be careful not to be carried away by current position where I'm having economic crisis, but the workers are still saying they want increment. It's their right. Is it true? ILO. Yeah, you are clapping hands, but economy is in trouble. And I have more people who don't add to what they have. They have nothing to add to. So I'm telling my trade unions, yes, comrades, you have a right to ask for more. but you are adding to what you have. How about thousands who are unemployed? That's how I calm them down. But I don't know for how long. This year, my Prime Minister is in trouble. Our focus will be on strengthening growth drivers linked to the potential of priority value chains, particularly agro-processing, mineral beneficiation, and so forth. Key enablers in this regard have been identified as energy, intellectual property rights, skills, information and communication technologies, and private sector investment, among others. With respect to all these dimensions, SADC is currently in process of developing a regional strategy on the fourth industrial revolution and have no doubt that the Global Commission's report will be a valuable reference. With these remarks, Chairperson, it is an honor for me to once again commend the report of the Global Commission and assure you that all that SADC through its structures will give due consideration to it and fully participate in follow-up actions. The quest for human-centered development is without doubt a fitting foundation for the future work of the ILO. With it, I would like to thank you and Comrade Cyril, just calling me to come here without negotiating as he did with you reminds me that you still think Namibia is under South Africa. Now we are an independent country. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, the President Gangbob. I hope organized labor is not going to take the advantage that it seems both the presidents comes from organized labor. But President, you have empowered the ministers of labor on how to calm down organized labor. So we're going to use that tactic. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, allow me now to call upon the ILO Director-General, Guy Ryder, as the convener of the Global Commission on the Future of Work to make comments. Director General.
Thank you very much, Minister. His Excellency Cyril Ramaphosa, President of the Republic of South Africa. His Excellency Hage Geingob, President of the Republic of Namibia and Chairperson of SADC. Minister of Labour of South Africa and past President of the International Labour Conference, Ms. Mildred Oliphant, all ministers in attendance, Mr. Mthunzi Madwaba, the Employer Vice Chair of the ILO governing body, representatives of workers and of employers, my colleague, Cynthia Samuel Onjuwan, Regional Director of the ILO in Africa, Executive Director of ALAC, Mr. Patrick Naleri, ladies and gentlemen. As has been already recalled by the distinguished speakers before me, we meet at a moment of anniversaries and of centenaries. Amongst them, the happy coincidence of the centenary of the International Labour Organization and the centenary of President Mandela. And I think that happy coincidence is in itself both an inspiration and a call to us all to review and to renew our commitment to the cause of social justice, which is the founding mandate of the International Labour Organization. And it seems to me that this inspiration and this imperative is all the more powerful because, as President Ramaphosa has reminded us, the world of work is living through a, I think, probably unprecedented period of transformative change. And that change brings with it, of course, opportunity, but also all too frequently feelings of uncertainty and even fear. And we need to address all of these sentiments. Change is coming not only from technology, although that is what is most frequently talked about. It comes from demographic tendencies, aging populations in some parts of the world, youthful populations growing in others. It comes from the action that is and must be taken to combat climate change. And if we consider that climate change is provoked by human activity, then we have to remember that most of that human activity is work or related to work. And we have change also generated by the increasingly uncertain forward march of globalization. The ILO in these circumstances has felt it proper, and I think in this occasion we were right, to dedicate our centenary to a major reflection on the future of work and what that meant for the mandate and the activities of our organization and for our cooperation with our member states. And so I'm absolutely delighted to have been invited here today to mark the launch of what stands at the center of the ILO's initiative on the future of work, and that is the report of our Global Commission on the future of work. And being in South Africa in particular allows me to express profound gratitude to President Ramaphosa, the co-chair of our Global Commission, along with the Prime Minister of Sweden, for his extraordinary leadership of what turned out, I think, President, to be an extraordinary commission. This was a group of people with strong views, and I think those strong views required strong leadership so that we could get to agreement on the report that we now present to you. Being in South Africa as well gives me the opportunity to recall the remarkable shared history of the ILO and South Africa. It has been an eventful history. To my knowledge, South Africa is the only member state of the ILO that at one point was required to leave the organization. Well, that was a little while ago now. But of course, the return of your country with democracy to our organization was one of the great moments that we remember with pleasure and excitement. Being in Africa as well, and being in the company of President Geingob also offers me the opportunity to thank him for his leadership nationally and at the SADC level in everything that we are doing to address the issues of the future of work. Ladies and gentlemen, when the ILO launched its initiative on the future of work, and that was back in 2015, we thought that the right place to start was by asking our members their views on the future of work. And so, as President Ramaphosa has recalled, we asked our member states to launch national dialogues, tripartite dialogues on the future of work, and we were extremely encouraged that 110 of our member states did just that. 31 of them were in Africa. And this has been extraordinarily important because these national dialogues and the voice of Africa's tripartite community were fed into the work of our Global Commission from the outset in an inception report. And that, I think, was very important raw material upon which the Global Commission worked in the 4 sessions that it held between August of 2017 and November of 2018. There were some decisions taken very early in our Commission's work, which have framed the report now before you, and which I think bear repetition. Firstly, the Commission decided that it was going to produce a report which is concise, it's an accessible report, a report that is action-oriented, not a technical report, although grounded in very strong technical research, not a set of forecasts or projections about the future, because you can find plenty of those in different places. And one of the basic points of our Commission is the future is not yet decided for us. The future of work is for us, governments, employers, workers, to construct together. And we want a future of work which is in the image of social justice and provides decent work for all. And then we decided that the report should focus strongly on the person, on the individual, on the human being, and the work that she or he does. And those thoughts were inspired by often repeated parts of our original constitution at the ILO, the fact that labour is not a commodity, and the fact that the overall objective of policy making in all areas should be the advancement of the material welfare and the spiritual development of each and every one of us. And then, as a starting point of its work, the Global Commission was acutely conscious, and this bears also repetition and emphasis, that this report had to make sense, had to be relevant to all of the 187 member states that make up the global family of the ILO. It had to be a report that addresses the situation of subsistence farmers in sub-Saharan Africa, for example, or a worker on a digital platform in any part of the world. And that was, I have to say, not a small challenge. And so our Global Commission came up with the report, which, as has been very, very eloquently outlined to you by President Ramaphosa, sets out a human-centered agenda for growth and development based upon these three pillars of investment. Investment in people and their capacities, investment in the institutions of work, and investment in decent and sustainable work. This at a time when the most frequently asked question about the future of work is indeed, where will the jobs of the future come from? It's not my intention now to repeat what has already been said about the content of these three pillars. They've been already put to you. But let me just perhaps add a couple of underlying considerations to the 10 recommendations that are contained in the report. There is a final chapter, and it's not the least important, of the report, which is entitled Taking Responsibility. And here we make it clear that the Commission recognises very well that whatever the value of its recommendations, their value will be in the consequences that they produce, and those consequences depended entirely upon the extent to which they were the basis of action at the national, regional, and international levels. This final part of the report recommends that all of our member states put in place national strategies on the future of work with tripartite involvement. It also calls at the international level for new institutional arrangements that would promote better coherence between different areas of international policy making, not only in the field of labour, directly addressed by our work, but in the field of trade and in the field of international finance. And so there is this idea of putting in place new institutional arrangements between, for example, the ILO, the World Trade Organization, and the International Monetary Fund and World Bank, the Bretton Woods institutions. And I would add to this that all that we do needs to be framed as well At the global level, in the objectives set out in the United Nations 2030 Development Agenda, in which decent work issues are centrally located, but I would also add that the work we must do must conform, promote, and reinforce in a mutual way the programs of the African Union, and I think the current and no doubt future leadership of the African Union would want to take cognizance of that imperative. So what happens next? Well, in the light of consultations and the launching processes such as the one we're engaged in today, the next big step in the ILO's calendar will be our centenary conference in Geneva this June. And many of you know very well this annual gathering, what is called habitually the Global Parliament of Labour, which brings together the governments, the labour ministries, the workers' organisations and employer organisations of the world. Well, this centenary conference will be special because, amongst other things, we will be adopting a declaration, solemn declaration which must stand comparison with the most historic documents of the International Labour Organization on the future of work. We have already begun the process of consultation on what that declaration might look like. It is going to be a major job ahead of us, but I think that we are all committed to living up to the ambitions that we have set ourselves. We have invited heads of government, heads of state to attend the conference, and I am very encouraged that we will have a very considerable number of dignitaries to accompany us at the conference. And this declaration, to be adopted in June, will set the stage for what happens next. But what happens after the conference is really what matters. What we do to translate the recommendations of our Global Commission, the content of the declaration, into action to bring results in your countries. To that challenge, the ILO will be framing its program for the coming years only in November, in the light of what is decided. And in Africa, we have an extraordinary opportunity, and it's a very, again, fortunate accident of the calendar, that the next ILO regional meeting for Africa takes place in December in Abidjan, in the Côte d'Ivoire, in December. It is a golden opportunity for us to steer this whole process in the direction that our African constituents would require it to go. I don't think it is for me on this occasion to point to where the priorities of your continent might lie in this direction. It's rather for me to listen to you, and you will have opportunities to make your views very, very clear in the processes ahead. But I do want to insist on the fact, and it's a reality, that an acid test of the value of this whole Future of Work initiative will be the margin of difference it will be able to make in the worlds of work in each and every one of your countries, where decent work deficits are sometimes considerable and where the ILO's responsibilities are equally considerable. And let me close by echoing what President Ramaphosa said to us just a few minutes ago. This is a moment of accelerated change in the world of work. We know it. Let's not turn our back on it. It's our challenge not to stop change, but to shape change so that it does lead to that future of work that we want. Yes, the future brings with it a panorama of opportunities and problems and challenges. And I want to close by saying that we would do well as we live up to meeting those challenges and opportunities, to take heed of what President Mandela had to tell us when he said that, may your choices reflect your hopes and not your fears. So let's go forward with that hope and that determination to build the brighter future that our Global Commission puts before us. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, DG. Now, according to the program, all the speakers have spoken. Now, I've been instructed by the co-chair, President Cyril Ramaphosa, because this is not my program, it's his program. He said I must allow few hands if there are any that wants to make comments and seeking the questions for clarity. But he said I must dictate how many minutes am I going to give to those people who will be speaking. Now, there are gadgets that are in front of you. Then you will raise a hand. I will give you the number. Then it will depend how many people has raised their hands, so that I can dictate within these 20 minutes. But before I do that, there is a member of the commission who is the Vice President of the IOE. I will just give him 1 minute to comment. One, Mthunzi Mdwaba, as the Commissioner. 1 minute. Can I see the hands for those who want to make comments or questions of clarity? You can make a comment, Mthunzi, just continue.
Good morning.
Otherwise, you will forfeit your 1 minute.
Good morning, Minister. This is more than Tumamina. This is serious. I don't know what to call it because I'm not quite sure what to say. Good morning, colleagues. In 1 minute, I think all I should mention is that we had a very good group of commissioners which came from all over the world that represented very different parts of our society, different constituencies, the informality, trade unions, business, academia, the ILO itself. And it was very refreshing to have the kind of engagements we had. You will have heard from my colleagues that there are a lot of very aspirational elements of the program and the report. And what we have to do, of course, is to prepare very realistically, paying attention to pragmatism for the International Labour Conference that shall be in June this year to celebrate our centenary. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you very much. You complied within the minute. I have seen one hand from the minister from Nigeria. You can speak. I'm not going to dictate to him for how many minutes because there are no other hands, but it should within the minutes that was given to me by the President. Minister?
So can I take the whole day?
Now there are two hands. It's one hand that side. Okay.
Your Excellency is the President of South Africa and the President of Namibia, our Director-General, Honorable Ministers of Labour from member countries. Mine is just to first say that we appreciate President Ramaphosa for taking up the job. It was a job that came out of a conspiracy, according to him. But the conspiracy is a conspiracy in the right direction. I don't know who else could have done it better for us than he himself and that of Sweden. So we thank him for bringing out time as head of state and still giving time to his constituency, the labor industry. The report, I've just gone through some aspects of the report, but I like the honesty in the report. They have said that even the commission members did not agree with unanimity on every issue. And so what we have now is a concise report, which we have to then peruse, digest it, and then fan it out into other aspects that will help the world of work. So I think we will do that. We'll do just that. And I want to assure him that when we do that, we'll come back with our other suggestions and recommendations that will make the report very workable. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister. And I agree that the conspiracy was the good one, President Ramaphosa. There's one hand there, and I think it's organized labor.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. I am speaking on behalf of SATUC. My name is Mayan Subramani. I think firstly, Minister, we want to welcome the sterling work of the ILO's Commission on Future World of Work report under the leadership of the President of the Republic of South Africa, Comrade Cyril Ramaphosa. As Labour, we support the broad thrust of the report, which essentially seeks to impress the urgency for decisive actions, by all stakeholders, governments, employers, and unions, and the recommendations on how to leverage these transformations through social dialogue and with an inclusive, human-centered agenda. At the heart of the challenge is job redundancies, created as a result of skills mismatches, which requires careful and deliberate transformational investment in skills development to ensure that the shocks and threats to massive and instantaneous job losses and retrenchments are minimized and avoided, that those that are negatively affected are supported and developed to be employable in order to be reabsorbed in other functions in their current workplace or similar workplaces, or into other sectors of the economy, or are supported in entrepreneurial or SME development initiatives. Now, as skills development is a two-way street, Labour, supported by government and business, has to play a role in raising the level of awareness of workers to what lies ahead and what needs to be done in order to secure the best possible outcomes in ensuring that workers remain relevant, productive, and functional in the future world of work. This is no easy feat, as it will require a mindshift change, both from employers and from the workers themselves, to commit themselves to drive and embrace the principles of lifelong learning. There can be no room for complacency or indecisiveness where this is concerned. As a case in point, SASBO, the finance union, as an affiliate of COSATU and supported by the employers in the banking sector, is leading the conversation on responsible digital transformation that is to the betterment and benefit of society as a whole. Just last year, we held a finance sector Indaba where we made available material that was presented by world-renowned leaders and subject matter experts. We also created a short clip on digitization to raise awareness and prepare our members for the changes that lie ahead. The tech space is currently gender-biased, and this will require concerted effort from government, community, parents, educators, female learners themselves to actively pursue maths, science, coding, and tech-related development from a basic education level. Of course, a conducive and sustainable environment encouraging the participation and managing our girl children through the digital journeys is essential for success. So is public-private collaboration and partnership, a tripartite approach to decision-making, inclusive, transparent, and win-win solutions in order to secure enhanced versatility, facilitate mobility, and to build resilience. I thank you.
Thank you, Satuk. I was going to say you may now round up. Community?
Thank you so much. My name is Tandiwe Mfulo. We appreciate and welcome the global report, especially when it comes to make sure that the technology that is going to happen is human-centered, so that there's no fear of people thinking that they will lose their job because of robots or because of what. Now, when the report comes in this way to make sure that before anything happens, all of us are human, and make sure that the decent work that is there for workers is happening. And we appreciate that very much. And in terms of policy as a civil society, we will be monitoring the implementation and also making that we support what needs to happen. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, community. Those were the only hands that I have seen. Now I will hand over to the co-chair and the convener to make comments on the comments that were was made through the floor. I don't know who's going to start first.
The co-chair has delegated to me at least the initial task of responding to the points that have been made. Can I begin by responding to what our friend, the Minister from Nigeria, who is a member of the ILO governing body as well, has said? Yeah, you know, there is, I think, an honesty about this report in the sense that it is not trying to say that there is a solution to all of these challenges, a one-size-fits-all response to the challenges being faced in Nigeria or anywhere else. It is for our member states, and I do want to insist upon this very strongly, to take this report and, of course, to put it into their own national circumstances and come up with the sorts of proposals when they come to our conference in June that seem to fit their own national requirements. So this is not trying to shoehorn people into a framework, a single framework, and I think this is simply the realism with which our Global Commission has addressed the issues. In response to the speaker from Organised Labour, and I thank him for his very thoughtful contribution. One thing which I think runs throughout the Global Commission's report and is entirely consonant with the way the International Labour Organization does its work is the interaction between governments and organized workers and organized employers. One of the underlying, it's not a recommendation, but I think it cuts across all of the recommendations in the report, is the idea that what we need moving forward is a recommitment to what we call the social contract. At one point, the report says the greatest social contract in history was perhaps when the ILO was formed, when the workers and employers and governments of the world sat down together 100 years ago and said, we will combine our forces on the basis of equality to bring about outcomes in the world of work which ensure decent work for all and social justice. I think there is a feeling, certainly this is my observation, it's a personal observation, that the Global Commission detected a need to reinvigorate this notion of social contract at a time when in the world of work, in countries, between countries, the notion of dialogue, social dialogue in the case of the world of work, is not as easy as it once was. I think we have to make that greater effort to recover common ground and our commitment to work, as has been said, not purely in the interests of each one of us separately, but in some notion of the common interest, which is a result of consensus building through dialogue. I think this is tremendously important, and to repeat myself, it is exactly how the ILO has always gone about its work. And I thank the speaker also from the community, from civil society. I think it's important for me to say as well that one of the very active members of the Global Commission was the international president of Oxfam. The NGO community was very much present. Its voice was very much present in the work of the Global Commission. We are very aware in the ILO, which is after all the tripartite organization of governments, employers and workers, that we have everything to gain by being open to the inputs, ideas, and of subjecting ourselves to the scrutiny, as has been said, of all actors in civil society. And we hope you will join us on what President Ramaphosa has said is the beginning of a journey as we construct the future of work. Our Global Commission report is not the end, it is the beginning of that journey. So thank you.
Thank you very much. I also want to add that the report will be formally handed over to the ILO, and that's where also the social partners will have an opportunity to engage on the report after that. I will now call Honorable Deputy Minister of South Africa, Nkosi Phathekile Holomisa, to make a vote of thanks.
Program Director, Mama Oliphant, my Minister, Your Excellency, President Cyril Ramaphosa of South Africa, and co-chairperson of the Global Commission on the Future of Work, Your Excellency, President Hage Geingob, President of the Republic of Namibia, and the SADC chairperson, Mr. Guy Ryder, ILO Director-General and convener of the Global Commission on the Future of Work, Mr. Mdwaba, Vice President of the International Employers Organization and Commissioner of the Global Commission on the Future of Work, Honorable Minister Dr. Sakai Nzenza, Chairperson of the African Regional Labour Administration Center, ARLAC Governing Council, Ministers of the Republic of South Africa and fellow ministers and deputy ministers from the rest of Africa, and members of the ARLAC countries, heads of delegations, Ms. Cynthia Samuel Olonjuwon, ILO Regional Director for Africa, Ms. Jacqueline Mugo, Secretary General of Business Africa, Ms. Zingisa Losi, the President of both COSATU and the Southern African Trade Union Coordinating Council, Ms. Tanya Cohen, the CEO of Business Unity South Africa, as well as the SADC Private Sector Forum, leadership of business, labor and community constituencies, Executive Director of ARLAC, Dr. Patrick Nalare,